Welcome to the Sharp Mind Show, episode 1. I'm Nate, your host of FitfutureMD, and I'm a life coach. If you're looking for life coaching, hit me up in the DM. Let's get you started. Let's get you life back straight, right? So let's get right into it. Episode 1. Obviously, I'm a Pirate ECU, so we're going to talk about the ECU NC State game, right? So, of course, what did we learn from the loss to NC State, right? The loss to NC State, obviously we never want to lose to NC State, but it happened. It is what it is. Our hearts are broken, but we're gonna make it through, right? But basically, ECU started out very, very slow, right, from the get go, right. We're down 17-0, and we came back to make it 24-17. So I feel pretty good that we didn't just give up, but you know, is this like, was State better on defense than we were on offense? Did we just come out slow? Was the scheme wrong, or did we make the halftime adjustment so that we kind of came back because of the halftime adjustments? I think that's really what happened. Like NC State used what we had in the bowl game and definitely used it to their advantage, right? So, and they jumped out to a 17-0 lead, and ECU just couldn't come back from that, right? But the big thing is that State stopped ECU on fourth down in the fourth quarter late, where we dumped the ball out to the flat to try to get the first down. I say we definitely could not run the ball this game compared to last year, where we ran the ball well. But Caden Hauser definitely proved that he could throw the football. He had over 300 yards, and you got some big receivers that can get up and catch the ball over the middle. So that was a good thing. That's really all I'm going to say about ECU and NC State. Obviously, congratulations to NC State for winning their first game. But I really don't know how that helps your season, to be honest. But at least you'll want to know, I guess. All right, so one that everybody's talking about this weekend is Texas-Ohio State, right? And they're talking about the poor performance from Arch Manning. Obviously Arch Manning is the heir apparent there in Texas, but obviously had a poor game against a really good defense in Ohio State, right? Now, there's two things really to think about really here with this. Should Texas and Ohio State even be playing each other the first week of the season? Is that just stupidity on their part now that, we're in a playoff system, right? So you're in a playoff system, and you're really top four are conference champions, right, in this playoff system. So there's really no reason to even be destroying yourself in in the non-conference schedule like this, right? Why would you play Ohio State the first game? Maybe that's going to make you more money. I really don't think it is. I think the same amount of people are going to be watching regardless, if you played Ohio State the first week or whether you played, some, rinky-dink school like most of these other colleges did, right? So that's just my opinion on that. I don't think you should be facing these powerhouse schools this early in the season. Basing out Texas is 0-1, and the best they're going to finish, is 11-1 or 12-1, and they still got to go through the SEC, which is been the most dominant conference for a long, long time, right? So they got a lot of money down there in Texas, and we expect them to start putting on a show there down there in Texas. But, if they finish with 2 losses, they may not make the playoff, right? So, or they'll be, barely in the mix for the playoff when they could just play Ohio State in the playoff and make the money anyway. But Archie Manning basically didn't have a good game, right? And basically from what the little bit of it that I saw, The first play of the game, he had an open receiver and he missed. But pretty much for the rest of the game, everybody was basically, tied up, right? Like there was nobody open ever, right? Basically, he could have just been dumping the ball down for all three of his throws, and that was pretty much it. Basically, what he could do. But he tried to thin the needle in there, and obviously threw an interception. But to me, you're going up against one of the best defenses in the country. Week one, before you've really learned anything as a starter, learned your players really that well. Obviously, you're going up against Davison. I can't even say the name. Davison Igbenosum. He got 10 tackles, right? Then you got, 4 other people with 6 to 9 tackles on the defensive side of the ball, like Ivor Reese, Caden McDonald, Caden Curry, Sonny Styles. Like you got big time names there, right, for Ohio State. So, you got to keep that in mind. Obviously, I think he's going to have a good season, Arch Manning, but I don't. They really think he's going to win the Heisman and stuff. Like I don't know if he's really got that, that kind of offensive weapons. Really, if you really think about it. But maybe he does. Maybe he comes back, has a great season, right? So now, that's pretty much it for me on sports. Obviously, I'm a big sports fan, so in these episodes, I'll definitely be talking about what's going on in sports. That's pretty much it for this episode on sports. So we'll talk probably more tomorrow about like the fantasy drafts and stuff going on. That kind of thing. But that's pretty much it for me on sports today. So now we're gonna kick into one of my favorite topics, right? And that's value investing, right? So value investing is basically what made Warren Buffett a billionaire, right? So what is an example of right now something that would be value investing, right? So basically, right now that is basically Cracker Barrel, right? So what happened with Cracker Barrel? Cracker Barrel decided to change their logo, and obviously people that were fans of Cracker Barrel did not like that change. I guess because they took the old man off the logo or something. I'm not, 100% sure on why they were upset, but they call it going woke or whatever. But the big thing is that if you go look at the history of the price of the stock, you see that it had highs in the 180s in 2019. It popped back to 175-ish, I think in 2021. But it's been basically going downhill since then, right? So, obviously this move got a bad rap, but the company itself had already been going down, for whatever reason, big competitors to the market. Honestly, I only really ever went to Cracker Barrel for breakfast, but I know Cracker Barrel, has lunch and dinner options too, but big breakfast person with Cracker Barrel, right? The breakfast is decent. Is it better than Denny's? Is it better than IHOP? Not really. Is it better than Waffle House? Not really. But you have an experience by going in there, and they actually have like a store in there, that kind of thing, right? But basically, you're seeing this. Your company's been going downhill for a while. It's not like it's just this random thing that's been going on, right? Cracker Barrel's been going down for a few years, right? They've gone from 175 to, they were sitting at, before I think the drop with this, they were sitting at 71.86, right? So they're high 71.86. And, you see it drop, after this issue to 53.15, right? So they dropped about 20 bucks. You know, not 20 bucks. They dropped from 71.93. Yeah, so about, just say 20 bucks, just to make it a round number. So they dropped about 20 bucks on this rebrand, right? Well, the simple fact is the rebrand, and then they changed it back anyway, right? So they kind of fake out rebranded here. And they're up $7 since they faked out this rebrand, you know. But basically, they got all this publicity, right? And, you know, all of a sudden, you got, you basically got these people that didn't know about Cracker Barrel all knowing about Cracker Barrel, right? So this is what I call like a value investment here, right? Cracker Barrel is still a good company, but they did something to make their stock go down, right? They still have, is their food still good? Is the idea of going in and shopping while you're there still good? Like that kind of thing? Are people, you know, willing to have an experience when they go somewhere versus, you know, just going somewhere to get just plain old food, right? So to me, this is an example of what's called a value investment, something that the principles of the business haven't changed, but something caused the value of the company to go down. So, you know, if you're sitting there, you're getting this company in the 50s range, you know, obviously it's worth in the 70s range. Obviously you can go ahead and get that, you know, that difference pretty quickly, probably in 2 or 3 months. Obviously not financial advice here. This is just an example of what a value investment would look like, right? The company did something that caused the stock to go down, but the company itself is still the same solid company that it always has been, right? So I just wanted to come up here and give that example of, well, Cracker Barrel, they went, you know, they faked out a woke. They got all this free publicity, and they're probably going to go right back to 70, 80 bucks, no problem, because nothing in their financials has changed. And, you know, anybody that was going to Cracker Barrel is probably not going to Cracker Barrel because they faked out this change, right? Obviously, they're, you know, still kind of a family-owned company too, even though they're public. So, like I said, I don't see them really having any issues here. But like I say, not financial advice, just an example of what is a value investment, right? And obviously, you would go through and you would look at what the other companies in this sector are doing, other comparables, and you know, make your choice on money that you are willing to lose 100% of, right? So that's my example today of value investing, which is Cracker Barrel, right? All right, so today in life coaching, we have Jimmy, right? And Jimmy says he wants to start his own business, but it's been 5 years and he hasn't taken action, right? So what are we going to tell Jimmy here? Like, he wants to start a business, but he hasn't taken action on the business that he's, you know, been doing, right? So number one thing I would tell Jimmy, the number one thing is that fear is a mile wide and an inch deep, right? So for some reason, some fear is keeping him from taking the first step forward, right? Whether that be people at work, you know, commenting on him, you know, like, so for myself, like I started a t-shirt company, right? And, you know, obviously that side hustle is very, you know, like, oh, why are you doing that? Why do you need more money? Like, why wouldn't you just go get a second job? You know, regular people don't understand, like, why are you doing a side hustle, right? And the first thing you just say when you're doing a side hustle is, oh, I just enjoy it, right? I just enjoy, you know, making t-shirts, right? So that's what I say. So if you have that fear of, you know, somebody in your life whether it be at work, at home, whatever. Like, I just enjoy making t-shirts, right? So I make cool, inspirational t-shirts that you can get at Ensorsale.com, and that's my side hustle, right? That's what I love to do and or like to do, and then they can't say, oh, well, you're stupid or whatever. They say, I just like to make t-shirts, and if you think of a cool saying you want to throw on there and it's not copywritten, I'm happy to throw it up there for you. So, hit me in the DM if you want to do that, right? But then the biggest thing you got to realize is that, do you want the dream outcome or do you want the business, right? Because that's two different things, right? So I like t-shirts, right? I like having inspirational sayings on me, like, the type of shirt that I would wear, would have something inspirational on it anyway, right? So why not make that for myself, right? And so same thing going with Jimmy here. Like, he's gone 5 years with no action. Obviously, fear is a factor. But which part of the outcome do you actually want? Do you actually want the dream outcome, or do you actually want the business, right? So if you want the business, that's different. Like, say, I want the business. I like the game and I want the business. Whereas somebody just wants the dream outcome, they just want the money, you're probably not going to ever get over that fear, right? You're never going to take that first step and realize that you're just walking through a puddle, instead of, actually realize that you're just walking through a puddle, and you realize it's easy, one step at a time, you make it through it, right? Because business is not hard. You've got C-level people, making so much more money than you, and you are so much smarter than them, right? They are lazy making millions of dollars, and you would be willing to work 120 hours a week because you love it, right? So keep that in mind. This is my life. This is, little life coaching scenario for you. But what I would tell him is to figure out what it actually is. Is it the fear? And does he actually want the business, or he just wants the dream outcome? If he just wants the dream outcome, he's never really going to get over the fear. So we need to pivot. What I would do is, if he really doesn't want the business, he wants the dream outcome, then I'm going to pivot and give him the dream outcome an easier way, which is through investing, which is what I just talked about before with value investing, right? But this has been the first episode, of the Sharp Mind Show, right? So we're here to get your mind sharp. Obviously, I'm a sports guy. I like to talk about sports. But obviously, we talked about investing here, and we also talked about life coaching scenario. So that's pretty much going to be how the show rolls. I'm going to try to keep it, kind of under 20 minutes. Obviously, there's going to be, inspirational messages, because I started with nothing, and how can I lose, right? So if you started with nothing, how can you lose? Let's get you right. Let's get you signed up for life coaching. Make sure you shop at Ensorsale.com. This episode is brought to you by Ensorsale.com. But, this is kind of what I'm about, right? I'm kind of about, helping people, and, that's what I'm looking to do. If I can help you out in any way, obviously, any kind of questions you guys have, make sure you send them to FitfutureMD@gmail.com, and I'll try to answer them here live on the show. I'm going to be trying to commit to doing this every day if I can film it live. And, obviously I'm going to try to get better at not saying or or all that kind of stuff. But this is the first episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you click the link down below. And if you're interested in life coaching, hit me up in the DM. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.